everyone, and welcome to Blabbit. Blabbit comes to you every Friday, same time, same places, where we discuss with professionals different topics about business, speaking, presentations, and branding. For those of you who may not have been here before, my name is Glenn Ingram. I've been working in sales, coaching sales, training sales, helping people become better communicators for the better part of the last 2 decades, and just enjoy helping people understand influence and communication. Paul, how are you?
I'm doing well, Glenn. For those of you tuning in for the first time, I show up here every Friday with Glenn doing Blabbit. My name is Paul Geiger. I'm a New York City public speaking coach and presentation expert. I help people refine the messages, the stories that they tell both their customers, their peers, their superiors, their direct reports. I even help them with the stories they tell themselves. And that always makes Brad laugh. Brad, please.
I'm Brad Federman. I'm the CEO of Performance Point. We really focus on helping people and companies discover and live their possible. We really focus on 3 core things. 1 is engaging employees. 2 is building resilient relationships that stand the test of time, both good and bad times. And then 3, promoting agile, collaborative cultures. Our goal is to create great work environments where people enjoy what they do, produce fantastic results, and we reduce barriers and create bridges.
That's awesome, Brad. Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks.
You made that comment about culture, and I kind of want to jump in with both feet on culture because with relatives I know, friends of mine that are working in the great state of California, it seems like everybody got the same memo about a week to 2 weeks ago that says, hey, it's July, bring your butt back to work, let's get going. How would you work with or coach businesses during this transition for a multitude of reasons to, I guess, develop or enhance that culture when some people may not be excited about coming back to the workplace?
Well, the first thing I would say is I'd be careful about sending that memo out. Mm-hmm. You know, there are 3 core groups that are reflected in employees right now. There's a core group that says, I need to be back in an office. I can't do this anymore. And we need to respect there are some people that are struggling. There is a core group that says, I don't want to be in the office, right? And we need to respect that, but we also need to realize that not being in the office at all and that desire for your introverted side, if you will, can cause them to be on an island and hurt the culture and hurt collaboration. So there's got to be some give and take there. We can't just sort of say, never come in, work from home all the time. Right. And then there's a third group that says, and that's the large group, it says, we want to come back, but not all the time. We want a hybrid approach. I want some flexibility. You know, when the cable guy comes to my house, it's an ordeal to make sure that I'm not in the office. Well, if I knew that I wasn't going to be in the office 2 days a week, then generally speaking, then I could plan for those moments. I can work from home. I can be there for those times, and it wouldn't cause the ruckus that it causes in my house and in the workplace. So I think organizations need to think about a strategy that reflects pulling the people in that need to be in the office because they can't work by themselves. It's been too hard the last year and a half, allowing some freedom for those folks that want some introverted time and creating flexibility for the majority of folks that really need that flexibility to function and have work-life balance. And I don't know that all organizations are thinking about that. Some have gone to, we're going to stay remote. And I think there's some problems with that. And then you have others that are saying, everybody get back in here now. And I think there's some inherent problems with that strategy. It can't be a dictate. It's got to be worked out in a more productive way. So I think it's the first thing you've got to do. The second thing is I think you have to change your mindset about what an office is for. You know, the reason we had offices and people didn't work from home was because we didn't think we could do it. And we didn't think we could do it because, you know, I'm going to tell you the dirty little secret. The dirty little secret was we could, but many executives didn't think people would be productive. That's why they didn't think we could do it. They didn't think their people would do it. And guess what? The COVID pandemic proved everyone wrong. Employees were productive, right? So we can do it. And so the office used to be about inspection and accountability. You're here at 8, you're here till 5. I see papers on your desk, right? It was an accountability control function, right? And the office needs to switch from accountability and control to camaraderie and culture. if we're going to bring people here, what benefit do they have coming here? What are we doing that drives our culture and a connection between people? That should be something we should be thinking about, not as a return, not as a set it and forget it. Most cultures are by accident, or they're set it and forget it kind of cultures. Mission, vision, values, they're up on the wall. Great, we're done, right? It has to be a daily, weekly effort. And so I think you have to learn how to weave culture into your everyday practices.
Can I expand on that real quick, Paul?
Yeah, sure, Glenn.
It's kind of interesting because I have, mid-20s daughters with boyfriends and stuff like that. And so they're all looking at different jobs and doing stuff over last year.
Hold on. Are you okay?
That I have daughters at 20s with boyfriends?
Yeah.
No.
As a
But
father.
that's another story for another couple hours.
Or another kind of Blabbit.
Yes. But it's been interesting when you look at culture. And I think so many companies are going to get left behind in this generation we're in and this decade we're in, because we had that time, like you mentioned, when you're at the office, so I can see you. I know you're working. I don't know what you're doing. You may not be getting productivity done, but I can see that you're there performing a task. Do you see a transition to more of a performance-based work environment where who gets the work done the quickest? It doesn't matter if it takes you 2 hours or 8 hours. You get all your tasks done, and that's what you're evaluated on versus being there and being busy.
Yes and no. So do I think we need to move in that direction? Absolutely. Do I think some organizations are going to do that? 100%. Do I think a lot of organizations are going to struggle with that? Absolutely. But I don't think just organizations are going to struggle with that. I think there's going to be an employee set that's going to struggle with that. And depending on how organization handles it, it could cause struggles with even your best employees. So here's what I mean. Glenn, if you're there and you're putting in the hours, and Paul's in there getting everything done in 2 hours, then some organizations, instead of rewarding Paul, are going to say, Paul, glad you got it done in 2 hours. Here's a lot of Glenn's work, right? Mm-hmm. And that's going to frustrate Paul, because now all of a sudden Paul's not getting paid more, but he's got more on his plate, and he doesn't know whether they're going to deal with you or not, right? And so you've got this, the issue has to be, our concept of accountability has to change. It can't be about putting in time. It can't be about putting in years. Even compensation today, when you look at compensation, one of the reasons we have problems with compensation and issues around diversity and equity with compensation, especially male, female, has to do with the fact that when women leave the workforce for family reasons more often than men, reality of it, then when they come back, we base pay on things like years of experience or what your last job paid, and they get burned by that. Now they could start, and I could have a woman working doing the same job that I'm doing, and she can outperform me every day, and yet the company will pay her less. And so it really needs to be reflected. Accountability, reward, recognition, everything needs to change to be around performance. But I'll even go further. I think organizations are going to experience more change than ever before. In fact, they predicted that the next 10 years will produce more change than the last 100. Now, I want you to think about that. If you fell asleep in 1900 and woke up in 2000, how disoriented would you be? Right? Now, we're going to see that, feel that, experience it in 10 years. People are going to get left behind so fast. It'll be amazing, right? So organizations are going to need people to not just be productive and manage accountability around production. They need them to manage lifelong learning. The entire concept of what we're going to do has to change. You're going to have smart clothes that hook you up to the internet, manage your health, appliances at home, all kinds of things. You're going to have the first liver printed with a 3D printer used in a transplant by 2025, they think. First robotic pharmacist employed by 2025. They're talking about having artificial intelligence board members on boards. The world is completely going to be different. You have more robots than workers. You're going to have more computers than brains. You have more currencies coming up in the future than countries. Everything we know is going to be flipped on its head. And whether those things exactly come true or not, the speed and the rate of change will exponentially increase. So our employees have to keep up. And if they don't, when we let them go and we look for new ones, we won't be able to find them. Organizations and employees are going to have to work out a new career development path that makes sense for what we're about to enter.
Don't blink, you may miss it.
All right, wait. This is all too much for me. I'm going to sign off and go outside while things are still slow. I don't even know if I'll have the ability to smell the roses in 10 years, Brad, from what you're saying. But you know what's, I had an interesting thought. Now you just like blew my mind. But anyway, I suspect that you're right, because you're right about a lot of these things, and a lot of the things that you're talking about that are now happening very, very quickly, are actually things that you have been preaching and teaching for years and years and years about improving workplace culture, about, collaboration and empathy and transparency and autonomy and growth and impact on the company. But what we've been hearing, and the phrase that I've been latching on to, is the phrase talent is on the move.
Oh, yeah.
Meaning that employers probably used to listen to you and think, wow, that's a really good idea. That's a really good idea, Brad. You know what? That Brad, he understands the way things connect together. And man, that would be great. Yes. I think that would really put our corporate image out there and make us look like a bunch of good people. Now, if you don't do that, you're going to lose a lot of the people that you used to retain simply because you were the 800-pound gorilla in the room.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. It's like, yes, no longer are we preaching best practices just for the good of it. It's literally the horses out of the barn.
Oh, absolutely. You're 100% correct. You've got it coined, the great resignation, the great reshuffle. I've heard the tremendous turnover tsunami. It's happening. We've had more turnover and people quitting than we've ever had. And I don't see that as, I think the upsetting the apple cart in terms of turnover is going to happen not only from the employee side, but it'll also happen from the employer side. So think about this. Okay. So I think you have both forces happening. And I want you to think about the impact this is going to have. You have employees who are leaving because they want to work for some place that represents something bigger than themselves. They're leaving because they feel like they're not sharper today than they were yesterday, and they need to stay marketable because I have to work for 50 years and bring in income. They're leaving because they're mistreated. They're leaving for a variety of reasons. I have somebody I talked to today who told me about their employee who quit because they wanted more growth and they wanted to work for a company that represented their values more. And that's the reality of it. So you've got that happening. The flip side is, if change happens so quickly, organizations are going to be like an accordion. They're going to expand and contract in different areas, different directions based on their needs. So you're going to have virtual teams. They're going to pop up and then they're going to disappear. So they're going to do the same thing employees are going to do. So you have two forces that have totally destroyed any connection of loyalty, retention going on at the same time. And that is the premise of why the next few years are going to be tough for a lot of companies and individuals. And I agree with you 100%. So here's the deal. Companies are going to have to shift their thinking. Employees are going to have to shift their thinking. And employees in a lot of cases are, especially the ones that have an incredible skill set, are in a driver's seat right now. Employers can't find people. They're struggling to get good skill sets. Employees are in the driver's seat. Now that will flip back and forth. This is a cyclical thing. And I think we forget that. Right now they're going, oh, companies, you should have got your act together. You're in trouble. Employees are in the driver's seat. A year or 2 years from now, it can flip the other way, which means we can one-up each other every time the cycle changes, or we can learn to figure out how to make it more beneficial for both. And I think that's the challenge ahead of us. How do organizations and employees get back on a similar page?
Well, and I think you have two issues that they better address quickly. first one from that analogy where you talked about Paul being that overachiever that was doing more work because he could do it.
Yeah.
A lot of times for years, some people, I'm going to say maybe a little bit older, the 35 to 55, they just kept their head down and were doing that while they were in the office because that was kind of the environment. Now they've been out and have been able to open their eyes for the last year because there wasn't someone looking over their shoulder, and they may realize, you know what? I think I can probably get paid more to do this for someone else. So they may lose those people that were the heartbeat of their business.
Yes.
And secondly, with the younger generation below that, the quality of life may be worth more than some extra money that they're going to pay them.
Yeah.
So if they don't understand how to attract and motivate those different individuals, they're going to have some failures at one point or another.
Yeah, look, I think you're absolutely right. I'm sorry, Paul, do you want to say something?
No. Go ahead, Glenn.
I was just going to piggyback on what you just said. I had my father pass away about a month ago. I was lucky because we were able to get him out of the hospital into hospice, and I could spend time with him. But if you think about this last year and a half, you had people that lost relatives who didn't even get a chance to see them and say goodbye. Now, that changes you. I mean, COVID puts things in perspective. How, in terms of my mother, my father, my sister, was I there? Did I do enough? I couldn't be there at the end. I lost the shot to make the change, right? Now, all of a sudden, you're sitting there thinking, is the job really that important? I have spent so much time sacrificing my life for you. And in the end, I missed something, right? Because I didn't feel like I was there when I could have been. And when I couldn't make up for that time. So I think you even have people at all ages now who are contemplating value systems based on the last year and a half that are saying, you know what? You don't own me. I have a life. I have other things I want to do. I have people I care about. And I want to be able to pay attention to that as much or more than you.
Well, that experience, I had a similar experience back in 2019, which is pre-pandemic, where my dad passed away. And I literally just finally followed through on something that I needed to do 3 months later. Now, that had nothing to do with the circumstances of COVID, but just going through that experience. So I'm sure that obviously what you're saying magnifies that feeling of, hold on, I don't have forever to do these things. I'm going to do them right now. Yeah. Because time is short. One other thing I wanted to bring up, it's probably not the last thing I bring up, but something else that you were talking about earlier, Brad. We have been talking as if this is a cautionary tale for employers. And you did bring up, but employees have to watch out because as quickly as everything goes back and forth and shifts, there is going to be an incredible pendulum shift over the next 10 years. What advice would you give to some of our audience who are not employers? They are employees. You touched on it a little bit about addressing the skills gap that you might have in your own resume, or perhaps that involves getting the skills you need to aspire to where it is you want to eventually land. Just help us with that a little bit.
Absolutely. So I have 2 books I'm working on. One's coming out first, which is the culture book. It'll come out early next year. And then the other one's a career book, and it'll address a lot of these issues. But I'll give you a few pieces right now in this conversation. The first thing I think you have to start to say to yourself is, I have to have a long career where I bring in income and revenue for probably about 50 years if I graduate now, right? So if I'm entering the workforce, 50 years, I have to remain marketable. That's a long time. Yeah. In an environment where there's more change than ever before, in 10 years, you'll experience more change than the last 100, which means your skill set will disappear fast, like even within a year for some people. You add to that things like automation and AI, which are doing 2 things. They're replacing human beings and they're dumbing down jobs. Now, there are certain jobs where you're dealing with the AI and the robotics that are more specialized and skilled. Those few people are going to have.
No.
You there?
Yeah, you froze for a second.
Okay. Those people who are dealing with those specialized environments are going to be in good shape. But the other folks are going to struggle because there are going to be a glut of people who are going to be going after jobs that are being simplified or disappearing, which means wages will remain stagnant for them, if not drop.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a real challenge for a lot of folks. I'm not being gloom and doom. There's some good jobs that are going to be created, but there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be struggling too. So I think there's a couple of things that people need to think about. First of all, trades are becoming more interesting, right? You can simplify a lot of things and automate a lot of things when you're in a factory, when you're in a kitchen and it's set, but every house is different. So you can't just send a robot in there easily to do plumbing, to do electrical. There may be a point in time where that happens, but it's not in the near future. So if you haven't gone down the road where you're going into a corporate environment and you want to make sure you're safe, trades, I think, are going to be huge. More importantly, though, I think the people that will do well are people that view things from a Renaissance perspective. How can I be well-rounded? How can I be creative? How can I be constantly learning? Which means they need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. The moment someone says, I'm good at my job, I only have a few more years left, I'm not interested in doing that, right? Those are the people that are going to wake up and they're going to be in serious trouble. You've got to get up every day and say, what is something new I'm going to learn today? How am I going to offer more value today? And it can't be a part-time, like I'll think about this in 3 months or 6 months. The example I give is this. I'm sure both of you invest, correct? Okay. Mm-hmm. You probably have financial advisors too, right? Okay. So if you're putting money in a 401k or giving money to a financial advisor for them to invest, do you just give them the money and then walk away?
No.
So Glenn, how often do you meet with your financial advisor?
Well, not as often, but that's because he was my neighbor and we've focused on this over refreshments for years, for a decade.
Okay, good. All right. But you still meet with them, right?
Yeah.
And you probably meet with them at least once or twice or 4 times a year or something like that. Correct?
It's a close relationship. I can send a text message, get a text back. So different times.
But you're interacting. Yeah. Paul, same thing. You're interacting with them on a regular basis of some kind. Mm-hmm. And you're probably checking the reports, right? How are my investments doing? Okay. Which means that you have a financial plan that you're working and paying attention to on a regular basis. Fair? Mm-hmm. Why do you do that? Because you want to be able to retire and have the money for retirement. Now, how many people do you know that have a career plan that answers the question, where will I be in 5 years, in 10 years, that they revisit? Mm-hmm. And the answer is almost nobody. And here's the sad part about that. What funds your 401k is your career. That is the engine that funds everything. So stop paying attention to reports and ignoring your career. Keep paying attention to the reports, but you better make your career a priority. It better be something you're looking at on a regular basis. How is my industry changing? What technology is coming into it? How are jobs shifting? What does the future look like in terms of how we offer our service? What does that mean for me in terms of my role? What's a new role that's being created? I have to answer those questions. I have to think about those things. And then I have to think about my talents, my passions, and how they match what's happening. And if they don't match, where am I going to find that match? Because I need to have talent and passion that matches what the industry, the organizations, and the economy needs. Mm-hmm. And if I don't do that, I wake up one day and I'm completely irrelevant. Here's the interesting thing. Most people wake up at 48 or 50 irrelevant. Here's what the future is going to bring. You're going to wake up at 28 irrelevant, mm-hmm. 25 irrelevant, 32 irrelevant. You'll repeat it over and over again because it will happen to you if you're not staying ahead of the curve. And that's what I mean.
Now, what you were saying before about having a century's worth of change in 10 years, I know when I look back on my working career so far, I've already gone through 5 different iterations over decades. Are you telling me that we have to be prepared to possibly make a pivot every 2.5 years if the same rules apply in a similar cognitive universe? Is that, I mean, I didn't make wholesale changes. I'm still me, and I still, bring what I bring to every situation, but literally different skill sets. I had to learn and, unlearn and learn. and apply.
Yeah. I'll say it this way. It's not going to be tomorrow, but shortly, not too off in the distant future. I think we're going to be, with the gig mentality and the gig economy has already been started. That's not going away. It's going to exponentially increase. So, Paul, you used to be an actor, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you think about being an actor, that's the ultimate gig profession. You live and die by whatever happens next. And it's really hard. It's very stressful because you have no idea where your next gig is coming from, right? I actually think that the average worker can learn a lot from actors because I think that's going to happen to a lot of people. Think about this. If I run a company and I have a special need project that might only last for 6 months, I might hire you for that project for 6 months and then it ends. You have to recreate yourself somewhere else. Where's my next gig coming from? Okay, now I've got a 2-year gig. So to answer your question, do I think that's going to happen? Yes. And I think the pressure with that is going to be different than, I got to make a career change. I got to recreate myself. I've got time to do it. I think you're going to do it while you're at a gig, in between gigs. I think a lot of people are going to find themselves in those kinds of situations. Now, you're going to have a group of people who are going to be what I would call core employees, that are going to be pretty stable and they're going to be okay. If I run a factory and I have, there's a factory I know of that had like 1,500 people, and I think they're down to 25 now, right? It's all automated, and they may even shrink below that. But the 25 people that are there are just maintaining machines, right? They have specialized skills. As long as they have the specialized skills to take care of those machines, they're fine, right? But all those people that get displaced, they're the ones that have to find the new gig. And that is going to happen more and more and more frequently. So the answer to your question is yes and more, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what you're describing there is what I call the hustle. That literally has been a theme through my entire life. But what I think what we're opening the door to is hello marketing mindset.
Correct.
Because you have to be able to market yourself, right, Glenn?
Well, and the interesting thing when you were talking about that, Brad, is what I've seen over the last year personally. Someone that believes they're unemployable because they don't like having a boss other than the butthead they work for. And seeing what's going on out there in the workplace, because in the last year, I've had communications, I think people looking out via LinkedIn or whatnot. And, I always just kind of would shove them aside saying, I don't want to talk about that. I'm not looking to go work for somebody. But when you start the communications and they realize what you're willing to do to come on, that it can be a gig job versus a brick and mortar. I come into your office. I think you're going to see a lot of more change and flexibility with getting people with experience that can actually lead something and maybe not leading in the traditional way at the office.
Correct. I think you're absolutely right. And the interesting thing is, how long will it take our government to change the laws to make it easier to do that? But I think that's coming. I think we're going to have to see that occur. And I think what people are going to end up doing is they're going to become their own professional agent, right? You're going to have to represent yourself. And those that are better at representing themselves and staying relevant from a skill standpoint are going to do well. And those that don't represent themselves well and don't stay current and reinvent themselves, or I should say, are going to fall behind and have real problems. So,
and I think you broached a subject there that's going to blow a lot of people's mind in government very quickly, because I work with a lot of people in the legal niche that during this time, they've gone to more of this type of thing for hearings and stuff like this versus everything being judge centric, where I have to go there as an attorney, billing all these hours and waste my time waiting for my term in front of the judge. I think this technology is going to provide more probably people in a courtroom or a court with the judge doing stuff like this. They're going to have to move forward. Some of the older people aren't going to like it that have been around for a while, because they're going to have to do things now, because now I can be productive waiting for my time to talk to Judge Brad while I'm doing something else in front of my computer.
Oh, it's happening everything. You've got doctors doing virtual virtual visits. Mm-hmm. You've got newspapers and magazines that are using AI to write articles. Mm-hmm. So you've got less and less journalists. You've got lawyers. It's been predicted by organizations that certain amount of lawyers are going to lose their job. And I'm not talking about a few, I'm talking about a lot of lawyers who lose their job because much of the work they do will be replaced by AI. I mean, the reality is this is not a blue collar issue. And I think that that's the problem, that most people think it is a blue collar issue. This is an issue that's going to impact people at all levels in an organization, in all different types of jobs. The reality is, if you think you're safe, you shouldn't feel that way. If you think you're safe, you already have a problem. How's that?
So I think the common theme is no matter what you do, no matter what field you're in, if you're not the optimal student and constantly learning and striving to get better, you're going to get left behind.
Absolutely. You better plan for that. And if that means putting a little money aside to take a class, take a class. If that means doing a little side gig for a little bit of money to learn a new skill, do it. And don't wait for your employer to do it for you, because the truth is you own your career. Nobody else does. And if you wait for somebody to do for you what you want to be done, you will be behind. So,
I realize everyone does have to embrace this gig mentality, but I'm always famous for saying to everyone through my entire life, I've never gambled. I've never gone skydiving. I've never gone bungee jumping. I just live my life in the hustle. That's all. And it's just as scary. So it's just as much of a thrill ride.
There you go. Invest in
Never
yourself.
boring. Never boring.
Yeah. No, the lesson really is invest in yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's really the lesson. Invest in yourself and get willing to be uncomfortable trying new things.
Yeah. Doing things that you never actually thought you would do.
Correct.
Sometimes those old feelings of, I never wanted to do that. It's a real self-evaluation process of looking at it and saying, but what if? Like I say, not the worried what if, but the possibility what if. What if? Yeah.
That's good. I like that. I like that a lot.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more, because I know it's benefited me in my career as far as being the person that went out there to try and find other courses they could take, find other people they could learn from, whether it be mastermind, online courses, in-person conferences, and stuff like this. I think you're going to have to, like you said, have a certain amount of your budget that you're budgeting for this, whether it be time and or money, to be able to really advance your skill sets in the upcoming years.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. There's a lot of free resources or cheap resources too. So, I mean, you've got master classes, you've got YouTube videos. Heck, I just put a new floor in a pantry this weekend. Never did it before. I watched a YouTube video and I did it, and it looks great, right? So I'm about to do some stuff on my pool that I've never done before, but I've researched it and I'm doing it. And here's what's great. I'm saving a little bit of money, but I'm learning new skills. And so I do the same thing with what I do for a living. I invest, I research, I get certified. As long as I've done this and people come to me and say, you've written 2 books, you've co-authored a book, you're about to do 2 more, you know what you're doing, you're an expert. Every day I get up and I focus on what I can learn. And I work with other experts to learn more. So I made a joke on social media, Paul, you gave me like these kudos. And I said, well, I'm smart because I hang out with smart people like you. And it was a joke, tongue in cheek, but there's truth to it. You literally, even when I started my business, I used to work for another consulting firm for about 4 to 6 weeks out of the year. And that wasn't because I needed to. It was because it was refreshing. It was a new perspective. I learned from other professionals, and I got better and stronger because of it. And people thought, why are you doing that? Well, because it's going to make me more relevant for a longer period of time. So I got to say, I practice this. I don't just preach it. It's not something that I'm taking lightly. It's something that I take seriously, not just for other people, but for myself.
Yeah. Well, and you talk about the gig. So I'm going to pivot here just a little bit because, I work in a gig industry, have for years. And it's interesting as I talk to professionals. I was just on a conversation last week with a law firm in Denver, and they've hired this new marketing person. And it's hard to get sometimes professionals to understand, because a lot of times you may be very good in your area. And you may think, I'm going to hire a marketing person, I'm going to hire X, Y, or Z. And for that person to be very good in their area like you are, it's impossible for what you're going to pay someone to work there. And when you start trying to say, I understand what you're doing, but if you put together a gig team that focuses on A, B, C, and D, now you're going to have the optimal service because you have a professional that specializes in one thing, because some of these fields like marketing have gotten so vast and so diverse that you can't be an expert in everything.
Well, there's a second piece to that too, because I think you're absolutely right. The second piece is that if you're an organization or a set of individuals that do that work, you've invested in it, and that investment is shared across multiple clients, right? So I always think it's funny because I have clients that'll say, oh, we're going to do that internally, right? So you're just too expensive. And then you talk to them, 2 years, 3 years later, and they have this huge team of people that they've hired to get all that work done and then maintain it. And they're still having trouble maintaining the work. And if they utilize, our services, they would have gotten all that and more for less money. Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't have an ongoing expense on their books that they have now, but they don't recognize it in the moment in time. So then the companies, they go the other direction and they just start wiping out these departments that they've created. And then they outsource to other folks. And it's just interesting to watch that cyclical piece happen again. But I think the other piece is you're sharing expenses across multiple companies who are clients, so that when I use you, it's not just an optimal team that specializes, it's an optimal team that specializes, knows what they're doing, and your costs are lower because they're shared across a platform of clients.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you're learning while you're working with all of these different clients, and everyone benefits from that because of your laser focus of what it is that you do. I want to talk just a little bit because we did promote the fact that you would be talking about your book.
Sure.
The title is Cultivating Culture. And what I found really intriguing was the subtitle, which is what you can do, and I'm paraphrasing, what you can do in 15 minutes to improve the workplace, something like that.
101 ways to foster culture and engagement in 15 minutes or less.
That sounds intriguing. 15 minutes or less. Just give us 2 or 3 examples of what you mean by 15 minutes or less. I mean, we are a bite-sized, society, aren't we?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it boils down to we are what we do and we are what we talk about. And if you have a culture that you have created, you have values that you've created, the only way to support those is to revisit them. One of my favorite mission statements of all time was Pepsi's during the 70s. It was one of the only times they made strides against Coke. And it was 2 words. I hate mission statements because they're usually flowery created by a consultant, and they're 3 paragraphs and you never remember them. But Pepsi's was beat Coke. That was it. And every day when you'd walk in, people would ask you, Paul, how are you going to help us beat Coke today? Glenn, what are you going to do differently that's going to help us compete against Coke today? Right? It was clear, it was concise, it was compelling, and you could tie it to the work you did. And you had to be prepared for it, whether you were in the bottling area, HR, marketing, you had to think through it. Well, here's the deal. You've got to create those conversations with people individually and collectively. So we've got over 500 of those kinds of conversations, activities, 2-way conversations or activities that are created. We took 101 examples of those and put them in this book, very practical. You can pick up the book and you can start working with your people right away to generate the kind of culture you want. We've got them around issues like leadership, communication, talent development, inclusion, team harmony, solution seeking, safety, serving your customers are the key categories. What's really cool is we're actually going to have an app that's going to come out where all of the ones that we came up with are going to be in the app. You can actually tell us what your company's values are or what their pillars are. We can reorganize them, customize them to fit your language, your world, and then we can actually send them out in a time cycle the way you want us to your managers, so they're having those conversations with their employees, and they're doing it at the same time, regular basis. If you're a field organization like a hotel, we did this with some hotels, it's incredible. Changes the numbers in hotels dramatically. You'll be able to turn around and say, I want my GM to get, my general manager to get an email with this on there, and they're going to do this for their team each day, right? And they'll have a different subject they'll do with their team each day. So it's really powerful, but the whole point of it is moving from a set it and forget it experience of culture, moving from an accidental culture to one that is intentional and is continually sustained on a daily, weekly, and or monthly basis. That's the core of it.
So I had another thought. From your professional opinion, as we've been talking about all these things and how much things are going to change, we see a lot of business owners, a lot of people that are doing business or hiring a coach for their personal life, their business life, and stuff like this. Do you foresee with this vast change, a lot of people that are maybe in lower management, middle management, looking for a coach to help them move their career along?
I do. I actually got a call from someone. I'm meeting with them today, and they wanted us to potentially coach them. And they're doing it outside of their work environment, right? Some of the top executives have coaches, but at a certain level, you don't have coaches. Well, she wants a coach, and she's searching it out professionally and is willing to pay for it herself, right? So I think that that's going to happen. I think more organizations are going to move that way. And I think with the use of technology, you're going to see, and we're experiencing this, you're going to see coaching shift, and you're going to do it differently. With an executive, it might be a lot more intense one-on-one, or kind of a bouncing, a backboard, to bounce ideas off of and things like that. When it comes to managers and things like that, you might be helping people transition into more of a leadership role. And when you're talking about with professionals and even certain managers where they want you to work with them, especially around some broader issues, you might be doing it in teams or across technology, which makes it much more efficient and cost effective. I know we're moving in that direction a great deal. And so you're going to see a lot more people being coached even within organizations. And I think there's a realization as well, and this is an important one. When coaching came out, people thought it was the end all be all. Well, coaching doesn't solve all problems. A process problem isn't solved through coaching an individual. You've got to change the process. But more importantly, some people saw coaching as very tactical. I need to learn better decision-making skills, right? So work through that with me. What you're seeing more and more, especially with the stress in the work environment with COVID, a lot of people are struggling with resilience, with emotional intelligence. You're seeing people's tempers flare at work. You're seeing all kinds of things. Well, the reality is that people who don't have good, strong emotional intelligence, people that can't handle stress well, are struggling. You've got talented experts who you don't want to lose, but you can't allow them to leave a wake of people, in their path. And so people wanted to use coaching for that, but they want a quick fix. Well, fixing resilience and emotional intelligence takes time. It takes somebody becoming self-aware, unlearning and learning it, and not just to have a structure, but wiring. How do I cope with my wiring, right? If I lose my temper and I lose it on a regular basis, then that's hard to stop. You have to teach people to use the space between when something happens, a stimulus and a response, use that space wisely instead of just react. That is not a quick fix. And so I think people are beginning to realize that if they want to change some of these behaviors, it can't be a training class that's an hour online. It can't be a half day or a day. It has to be an ongoing effort, and it can't be a quick coaching piece that's going to be done in a month or 2 months. You're talking about, at least 6 months, if not a year or more for some of these people that are going to have to make that shift. And do you want to make that investment in them or not? That's a big question.
It's a difficult thing to really wrap your head around and actually to admit that it is going to take that much time. But I know Glenn and I, it came into my awareness a little over a year ago when Glenn and I were doing a webinar together, and somebody made the distinction between a coach and a trainer. And so in my language, when I speak to prospective clients, I say, I'm both a coach and a trainer. The coach makes you aware of what needs to be done. and the trainer holds you accountable. Now, as a coach, I can probably give you all the information, make you aware of it, does not mean it's going to stick. I always say the concepts are easy, but the execution is hard.
Sure.
It's everything.
You know, I do this. I say I'm a coach, which is a person that helps you think and provides a mirror. I'm a trainer when you need specific information to help on a certain issue or item, so I can educate you. And then I'm your accountability partner to make sure that you actually follow through and you're making progress. And I think all those matter when you're in that kind of relationship. And you're 100% correct. And that takes time, especially specifically for certain issues that I think corporate America is just now wrapping their heads around, because they like quick fixes. They want the silver bullet, right? Can we just check this off the list and say we did it? You know,
those shiny objects typically flare out pretty quickly.
Yeah, they do. They do. Absolutely. So that's what I mean by culture. I think everybody thinks culture is this big thing, and that it's all about the top leadership, and there is truth to some of that. But the truth is, your leadership, your managers, your supervisors are the translators of culture. And if I'm talking about, if one of our values in our culture is trust and investment of people, and I sit down and I say to you, what do you talk about every day? What do your meetings look like? And you start telling me, well, we talk about problems, we talk about money, we talk about profitability. Right? If I go around and I ask employees, what does this place care about? And they say, build as much crap as possible. I've heard that, right? If they say, make money for the company. If they say, work your butt off. If they say, you know, so why are you here? What makes you want to work here? And they go, paycheck. And 99% of the companies I go to and ask these questions, those are the answers I get back. There is no real culture. And so if you want your culture to exist, you need to define it, but then you need to help your managers and supervisors translate that to your employees in a way that is not one way, but in a way that creates a dialogue between them, the employees, and it's being done throughout the organization. Because if you're visiting it, revisiting it, talking through it, having experiences that make you have ahas about it, having call to actions that make you use it and do it tomorrow or throughout this week, that's what makes a culture live. So,
do you think that if you're experiencing discomfort about having some of these conversations that you're talking about, that should be a red flag that there's an area for growth and learning?
Absolutely.
How to have those conversations? Absolutely.
And I think most managers and even a lot of executives have problems with it, because take huddles, for example. You know a lot of companies that have huddles. I've visited the huddles, and I got to say, some of these huddles are the most depressing, boring, negative experiences I've ever had. You know, when you think about sports, huddles are supposed to get you pumped up before the next play, right? You're getting together to get psyched. And there's an interaction between the players, right? Well, you know, when we are doing meetings, we have huddles, we have experiences that are supposed to build our culture. There should be interactions with people, and it should get people psyched, and there should be learning, and we should get prepared for the next play. And we should, when we leave that huddle, we should all be on the same page. But the problem with that is, when you do that as a manager, it's not predictable. And most managers and leaders want predictability. So you know what they do? They get their script. And they go, today, let me tell you, or they get in their meeting for the week or the month, and they go, we're behind and we got to catch up. How are we going to get revenue going? I'll tell you what, here's what I want you to do, right? And you have this one-way vomit, fire hose, shoving it down people's throats. And then we wonder why people are disengaged. We wonder why they're not happy. We wonder why they say they don't have an opportunity to speak their mind, or they don't feel safe to do it. Well, we behave in a way that says you don't count, your voice doesn't count, except for once a year when we do a survey. You know, so just listen, shut up, and then get back to work.
I saw it tremendously in a previous career, where that 5-minute stand-up, that 5-minute huddle, rah, turned into a meeting that a time or two, I would say, you know, that could have been an email. We'd have gotten as much out of it.
Absolutely. I say this, no meeting should last more than 15 minutes, 30 minutes max. If it lasts more than that, it's not a meeting, it's an actual work session. And there is no reason, if I have a team of 10, to have a work session with all 10 people in there when I need 2 of them. So know the difference, schedule work sessions with the people that need to be there, and use meetings not for sharing lots of information because you give people an email, but for decisions, for experiences, for learning, for interactions, for recognition, for those kinds of meetings. Really should be about that. We talked about changing the office from a place of inspection and accountability to one of culture and camaraderie. That's how you do it.
Well, and I think what you just said there is something that we need to start coining. You don't have the 5-minute meeting, you have the 5-minute interaction.
Yeah, exactly.
Change the word around.
Yeah.
Just going back to what Brad said, Glenn, that's the reason we don't work with a script.
Mm-hmm.
We also don't work with a net.
Mm-hmm.
So
I love it. It's fantastic.
Yep. All right. So when you were giving us a little bit of a timeline on the book, you said it's in the publisher's hands, which we understand. They don't always work as quickly as we would like. We authors.
Yes. It is in the publisher's hands. The manuscript is completely done. They plan on publishing it February 2nd, 2022. So 2/22/22. I think that's a good sign. I like that. All 2s. So
very nice.
So early next year, the book will be out, and we're really excited about that. And then shortly after that, we will be publishing another book, which will be all about careers, and it'll be a fable. It's going to be an easy read. And it's going to give you the context of what you need to be thinking about to actually own your career. It's also going to give organizations concepts about how they can support people owning their career. And we will follow that up with both of them with products and services that support that. And we're excited about that because I think that that's really where the culture of companies going. I think that's where the future is. And I think that's where the big challenges are. So, yeah.
Okay. Or would you say with everything that we've covered here today, and I know that you were referred to as at times as a leadership coach, as a workplace culture engagement coach, would you say that everybody needs to discover a little bit of that leader in themselves?
Absolutely. I think if we think our job is not about leadership, then we're wrong. People have gotten so caught up in career paths, which no longer are really in existence. You can make them, put them together on paper, but that's not how life works anymore. It's not clean. It's not let's go up the ladder, right? People move horizontally, diagonally, it's just a different world. And so we've gotten caught up in titles and promotions, and we've gotten caught up in all those things. And what we've forgotten about is our contribution is what makes the difference. So if I think about that and I look at my contribution level, when I'm starting at a company and I'm new, I'm learning, and I can't produce a lot, which means I'm an investment to the company. I'm costing the company money. They're investing in me. I'm learning the culture, everything else like that. Then after a little while, I have to become independent. I have to be productive. So I become an individual contributor, right? And I do that by producing. I can add more contribution by becoming a problem solver, and then I can add more contribution by becoming an innovator, right? And then if I want to even go further than that, because now I'm that's great, but if I become a leader, whether I have a leadership role or not, then I actually influence lots of people. And now I'm influencing the performance of many other people, and my contribution level and my leverage is much greater. The way I do that is through learning influencing skills, learning to be a role model, learning how to communicate better under different circumstances that are unpredictable, being more comfortable with ambiguity, learning how to coach folks. And I can coach somebody who's a peer, right? If I do it well, I can coach someone who's a peer. I don't have to be their manager. And so if you really think about careers differently, if you want to add more value, I would try and be more than just really good at a job. If I'm really good at a job, learn to help solve new problems. If I want to be really good at a job, learn to help a company innovate. If I want to even go further, learn how to develop, grow, coach, and influence people, regardless of your title. The career title does not dictate your contribution. You do. And that I would say is a big shift that needs to happen in most people's minds.
So you're saying that you can and should be an influencer even if you're not trending on social media?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, you have a brand, whether you like it or not. You get to invent, build, and sustain that brand if you handle it consciously and intentionally over time, just like organizations do. Yep. Right. And I'll give you a logo and you're going to know exactly what that logo means to you. And it's shared across society because organizations have spent time building their brand. Right. Now, people don't think about that, but you either build it or somebody else will. That is an opportunity or a dangerous thought. Right. And it depends on which route you take.
So the old adage is coming around again: lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Correct. And I actually would say you can follow at times from a role standpoint, but you better always know how to lead at least yourself in the process.
That's awesome. A good closing statement, don't you think, Glenn?
Amen. Amen. Brad, as always, it's been a pleasure talking with you, spending time with you. If anyone would want to reach out to you to communicate, what's the best way to contact you?
I've got a great email, bfederman@performancepointllc.com. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on Facebook. We also have company sites on LinkedIn and Facebook and on Instagram and Twitter. So you can just look up Performance Point or Brad Federman. You're going to find me or the company. Connect with us. We want to hear from you. When we put out articles, feel free to read them. We put out a poll, take the poll, add to the conversation. We want to hear from you. Tell us what you want us to focus on, and we will do the research, and we will start the conversation.
You know what? A thought just occurred to me.
What's that?
Normally, we wait about 6 months to have you come on the show, but with everything you've talked about and the escalation of things changing, I think you're going to be back here every 2 weeks.
Well, I enjoy working with you two guys, so I'm happy to do it. How's that?
It'll be great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, everyone. We'll see you back here again next week, right before the good old 4th holiday.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.